So, as we continue our one-word study, we are on the word deacon tonight. I'm not hearing myself. Hang on one second. Well, I don't know why. There, you can hear me now, can't you? Yeah. Okay. All right, so tonight we're going to get into the study of the word deacon. Give me a one-word definition of what you think when we talk about the word deacon.
Servant.
Servant? What did you say, Patty, saying? Is there any other? Yeah, that pretty well sums it up. When we look at the word deacon in its original context, the word means to serve or a servant. When what we normally take as the installation of the first deacons, what was that verse talking about? Why did they look for men to serve the church in that way?
So the disciples would not have to do that work. They could focus on preaching, teaching.
So it was freeing up men to do other work, and it was leaving them with... Is that important? Is it important work in the church? Sure it is. If I will tell you from experience, let's say we get a day that has a lot of snow on a Sunday morning, I know I'm run ragged when I really would prefer to be in my office praying and reviewing my lesson before time for worship. And I know personally, just in that small example, it starts my day out wrong. It starts my mindset out wrong. So let's look at some of the uses of that. First off, let's look at Matthew 22:13. We're going to look up several verses. We're just going to look at how the word is used throughout the New Testament. Now, the word we're going to find here is a singular word. In Greek, it's diakonos, but it's used in a number of different ways. How? You seem like you've got it there.
22:13.
Yes.
Then the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot, and cast him into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth."
So here we have the king's attendants. So it's someone that the king could order to do something. Let's look at Mark 10:43. Jill, you got it?
But it is not this way among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant.
So if you wish to be great, you'll be a servant of others. Colossians 1:25. People that figured this out don't look up at me when they found it. They just keep going to the same page back and forth. Stacy?
Of which I became a minister according to the stewardship from God, which was given to me for you to fulfill the word of God.
So I became a minister, and here the word minister in Greek is diakonos, or deacon. I became a deacon. So promoting the good of the church. How about 1 Corinthians 3:5? Steve?
What then is Apollos, and what is Paul? Servants through whom you believe, even as the Lord gave opportunity to each one.
So here we show men who were preaching and teaching are also called servants or deacons here in this place. Colossians 4:7. Could have been nice and arranged them by book so you didn't have to go back and forth. Sorry, I didn't think of that. How was I finding all these different uses at this point, Bruce? I was just going down through my Strongs.
One thing I didn't realize, you're saying this is the Greek word used in all of these?
Yes, in every one of these instances. And again, how I found it was I looked up the Greek word diakonos, I looked up every usage of it, and then I clumped them according to how they were used, or the context. That's a better word. I clumped them according to the context in which I found them. There's many other uses of it, but these are going to be the contextual uses. Every contextual use is how I want to say that. So who's got this verse? Colossians 4:7. Jeff?
As to all my fairest Tychicus, our beloved brother and faithful servant, and fellow bondservant in the Lord, will bring you information.
So these are servants in the cause of Christ. Tychicus in this point. Now, here's one that we're going to get a little bit of interest in. The servants of Satan. 2 Corinthians 11:15. Now, while you look this up, what do we need to remember about Greek language? It's Greek, yes, very good. And I speak every language in the world but Greek, so it's all Greek to me, is the old joke. But Greek does not have as many words to describe things as we typically do. So the word servant is the word servant, but it can be, we're going to see, in many different uses. Who's got this verse? Okay, Patty?
Therefore, it is not surprising if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness, whose end will be according to their deeds.
Yeah, okay. And then, of course, 1 Timothy 3:13. There is the office of deacon. 1 Timothy 3:13. Have you got that, Dawn?
Those who have served well gain an excellent standing and great assurance in their faith in Jesus Christ.
So clearly they're talking about an office in that point, a title, just like we see the same kind of verses for elders. So, what do we kind of glean from this?
Well, there's a difference in the two.
Okay, so there are many ways to use the word, but we know that there are differences within those. And if we get to the word, or to the idea of the office of deacon, how do we determine if we're talking about the office of, or a person who serves?
Context.
We're going to have to look at the context of the verses. And just jumping ahead, if we're talking about Satan's servants, are they going to be the same ones that we're reading certain qualifications for? Clearly not. That way, only bad people would be husband of one wife. Yeah. No, you can't be sinful and evil unless you've got a wife. All right, so let's look at these qualifications for the office of a deacon. Who would like to read what's up there on the wall? Okay, Julie?
Deacons likewise must be men of dignity, not double-tongued or addicted to much wine or fond of sordid gain, but holding to the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. These men must also first be tested, then let them serve as deacons if they are beyond reproach. Women must likewise be dignified, not malicious gossips, but temperate, faithful in all things. Deacons must be husbands of only one wife and good managers of their children and their own households.
Okay. Now, this verse we know has been used and misused by different people concerning the office of deacon, but we're not going to spend our whole class period on these qualifications because we've looked at it many times, but we will go through them quickly. Men of dignity, not double-tongued. Those two go together. Now, why do they go together? They must be men of, what's another word for dignity?
My version says worthy of respect.
Okay. Another word would be honorable.
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy, right. So why would honorable, trustworthy, worthy of respect go together with not double-tongued?
Well, it's just the opposite.
Right, they're opposites. If a person's double-tongued, that means they do what?
You speak one way than the other.
Yeah.
What they say is different than what they do.
It's not necessarily, well, it is lying in a form, but we're not necessarily seeing this as the word liar. We're seeing this as a person that you're never really sure. I say something to please Jill, but then I say something different because I want to please Julie. Is that person worthy of respect? No, you don't trust them. And if they're going to flip-flop on every issue, you want to know where a leader stands. So, you know, as I look at men that are deacons or have served as deacons, and I'll use Greg because he's not in here right now to defend himself, but if I ask Greg to do something, oh, he's coming back. If I ask Greg, I'm using you, Greg. If I ask Greg to do something in the office of deacon, and he says, absolutely, I'll get it done, then I expect that. I expect him to get it done. I don't want him to say, I'll get it done to me, and then tell you something totally different. He's not trustworthy at that point. So, men of dignity and not double-tongued. It's interesting, here, this next one is a different qualification for deacons and elders. Now, I don't want to make a much ado about nothing on this, but not addicted to much wine. What is the reason for that qualification? I don't want to go into the nuance of whether that means a deacon can be a drinker or whether there is no drinking ever allowed within the church. I think we do have to take it somewhat to face value, but what is the reason for the qualification not addicted to much wine?
Lack of control.
It's a lack of self-control. It could have been other qualifications here. It's about self-control. How about fond of sordid gain? What is sordid gain?
Could be greed.
Could be greed.
Gain, a sort of gain would be, well, we think money right away, money, but if it's gotten in a negative way.
Questionable, negative way. How?
Mine renders that as dishonest gain.
Dishonest gain. Which of the disciples was guilty of dishonest gain? And in what way?
He was taking from the treasury while they were preaching. He was carrying the money.
Yes. So we know that there were sisters or believing women that followed Christ around. A little early to call them sisters at that point. But there were women that followed Christ around and they provided for the needs of Christ and his followers. One of those ways we know was there was income coming in, money coming in. We do know at some point the women were providing some of that income. There was probably donations from others. But anyway, they had cash in their pocket. They were walking around with coins, and they had given that all to Judas. So let's just think in realistic terms. Judas was probably then giving the money back to the women to go out and buy food. Would you expect that? Or he was going and buying the food and giving it to the women? What else would you need? If you're traveling on the road nonstop for 3 years, you need food. What else do you need?
Shelter.
Probably lodging. Some nights probably on the road, but some nights in inns. You can't live forever on the road.
Some traveling expenses.
Traveling expenses. Jim? Clothing. Your sandals are going to wear out. The sandals of those days wore out fairly quickly on those roads. So, just your day-to-day living expenses. There probably was medicines or doctor's visits. In 3 years, on the road, nonstop, that many people, somebody's going to get hurt. I tripped walking in the auditorium today. banged up my arm and had to put Band-Aids on. I mean, there's going to be some just day-to-day medical needs and stuff. So Judas was controlling that outgo and income of money, and what's he doing with it? Skimming. He's skimming off the top. And probably his excuse was, or his method was over saying he paid more than he did or whatever, but so the deacons can't, and I think it's interesting the word fond of. What do you glean just from the use of the word fond of?
They enjoy it. They enjoy the game of the pocket.
Okay. So does that exclude that if we send Steve out to buy dinner, I give him $100 and it costs $98 and he sticks the $2 in his pocket, is he guilty of fond of sordid gain? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about rounding off.
French fries.
Yeah. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody that is intentionally going out and stealing the church's money. They hold to the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. What is that talking about? Now, these are not elders. These are not men apt to teach. But what, Jill?
Well, he understands the basic principles of Christianity, and he has a clear conscience about how he has conducted himself in relation to that.
So should he be a man of the word?
Sure.
Absolutely. Does that necessitate that he be someone that gets up and teaches class? No, but it's a person of the word. And a person of the word has the tools on how to conduct themselves, how to live, how to lead others in a godly fashion. First be tested. How do we test somebody first? Allison?
Well, we don't normally give them like tests, but we can observe who's standing up to the work when there's a need that may not be a deacon yet, but they're still doing the work. They're willing to help with whatever needs to be done. That's testing.
So I keep picking on Greg because he's here, but how did we test Greg for the position of grounds and buildings and grounds? He was the sucker that kept doing it. No.
We dug a hole and planted it.
No, I mean, literally he was, though, in a way. I make it jokingly, but he was the guy that was doing the job, and we asked him to run with it. Dwayne had done it before him. Dwayne still does it. Probably more than his age should allow sometimes, according to my wife, who yells at me when Dwayne's here doing something, and go hurt my father. Okay. It's not here. But Allison will get up on a snowy morning, first thing. Make sure you get over and do Dad's driveway. Well, Dad knows that I'm going to get sent over there to do it. So what does Dwayne do? Unless it's just too hard to do it. I know he's gauged that because the first 5 feet will be done and he quits. He's run out. Oh, he is here. Oh, I did not see them sitting. He's hiding by Barry. The gray hair melded together. Oh, well, I'm not in trouble because he knows he does. He runs out there and sees if it's an easy one or going to be a heavy one. I don't mind, and he knows that. Okay, so, first tested. I'm going to shut up now. First tested, and then let them serve as deacons if they're beyond reproach. Now, here's the verse that people take. How is this taken out of context then?
That women can be deacons, because it says women must likewise be dignified.
Okay.
So like the men, the women must, is what they say.
So what is the test here to say then that does not include women?
Verse 12.
Oh, you're taking that out of context. Clearly you are, because it says women's qualification for this role is to be dignified. Actually, how does the verse read in Greek? Does anybody remember? You don't have to know the Greek words.
translation does it as wives. It doesn't say women, it says wives.
The actual Greek is their women. T-H-E-I-R, women. Their women, which would be, because of verse 12, their wives. So their wives must be dignified, not malicious gossips, but temperate, faithful in all things. Why is there a qualification for the wives of elders and deacons?
Because a wife can help or destroy her husband's reputation and career.
Very quickly. And also, go ahead, JC.
And elders and deacons also are to be in charge of their household. And that's part of being in charge of the household.
Listen, you will not be a successful leader in any endeavor if you cannot unburden yourself on your wife. If you can't ask them for their take or their... Now, there are times that I can't tell Allison something that's given to me in counseling in confidence. I do. But I also, the other times, I need her to bounce ideas. I need her to help me think through. And I need her to rein me in when I'm angry. You know, when I'm ready to just lower the boom on somebody, I need her to say, now think about it. You know, let's talk about it tomorrow. You know, sleep on it. But also, Allison can tell you, as a preacher's wife, many times the women of the church go to who? Me or her? They're going to go to her to say, can you ask Jeff too? Can you suggest to Jeff too? And many times conversations when she says, the elders need to, and I say, no. She'll say, but the women of the church are saying, or are asking, are concerned, and the elders have not heard that because the women are talking to the women. So the wife needs to be qualified as well. And JC is absolutely right. The husband should still control his family, although that doesn't mean lord it over. They should still be in control of things their wives are doing. And if they're not in control of that, you know, if I can't accept it, or expect that if I say, Allison, that's enough, I don't want to hear it, and I don't want you telling anybody this, I expect that she will be obedient in that, submissive in that, or I should not be in a place where I get that confidence of the church. Doesn't mean that my wife can say, I'm not going to be that woman. In fact, she did when it came to preaching very early in her marriage. She just came around to it the hard way. So, deacons must be husband of one wife, good managers of the children in their household. Verse 12 we're going to come back to in a few minutes. We'll get back to that. So I have a question for you. Can women serve as deacons? And my answer, I told Allison I was going to get in trouble tonight. My answer is yes, they can. Okay, so let's read as Bruce chokes. Romans 16:1. I commend to you our sister Phoebe, who is a diakonos of the church. I don't know how to pronounce this. In Synchrea is my... I'm waiting for a tomato or something here.
This is the other sense of deacon as a servant, because.
But it says a deacon of the church.
Well, of course.
She's a
She's a Christian, she's of the church.
As loosely as you've used that word, that's easily understood what she was. And we have women that do that today. There was prophetesses in Acts also. Does that mean that we should be saying that men and women, you know, were being servants of God in such a way? Again, you already said it. The context will tell us whether that's a position that is office or a description of their activity.
Did everyone who served a king in the first century fill the office of deacon in the church? Clearly the answer is no. Did everyone who did manual labor for the good of the church serve in the office of deacon? No. Did everyone who furthered the work of Christ, that was one of the usages, serve in the office of deacon? No. Did every good sister who did great acts of kindness and benevolence in the church serve in the office of deacon? No. Matthew 20:26. Whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant. Did everyone who wanted to be a great Christian serve as a deacon? The office of deacon? No. It all goes back to context. We have to look at the context, and verse 12 answers that. And I'm going to break this down using Greek. There are not, many times, there's not many times, and I've given you the Greek word in most of these one-word studies, just for the fun of it. But I do not believe that we have to go back and study Greek all the time to understand the context of the word. I think we have to trust in two things. One, the authenticity of the scholars who translated it to English. We have to trust in their veracity and their trustworthiness and their education. If we all had to be Greek scholars to say the Bible, none of us would study. Secondly, we have to trust in the Holy Spirit to have kept the usages pure. And I think the Holy Spirit has done an exception. He doesn't need my commendation, but the Holy Spirit has done just a commendable job in keeping the word very pure. Think about this. Think about the purity and simplicity of God's word after 2,000 years of translation into many languages. It went from Greek and Aramaic to German in the first Bibles, to English, the King's English, to American English, and it has been polluted many times. And what has happened to those polluted translations? They don't last. Oh, they get popular for a while. The Feminist Bible, it's not around anymore. The Reader's Digest Condensed Bible, which did exist, doesn't. There was one that hit the press, and it was going to be very popular, and I bought it to read it. But it was the rabbi's New Testament with notes. It was a feminist woman. Feminist woman. Well, they can be feminist men. It was a feminist woman who wanted to be a rabbi, not accepted as a rabbi, and it was a feminist view on how the Bible should read. The New Testament should read. And it's horrible. You can barely find it now after just 5 years. You find them not on the current sellers list anyway. So, in the office of deacon, husband of one wife. The Greek word here for husband is aner. Now, this is a primary word, man. An individual male. Okay, that word's going to come in. That's important in the different word for male here, or man here, not male. It is a male. Other uses in the Bible, fellow, husband, man, sir. Compare this with other uses of it, of the word man in the Bible. Words such as anthropos, which is mankind, humankind. The Greeks were very definite in their usages of words. When they said the word love, they defined it. Brotherly love, erotic love, love for God. Here, when they used the word man, they were definite in their article of whether it was a male or if it was mankind. And also the word wife, husband of one wife. Who said God doesn't have a sense of humor? Wives are called goons. Anyway, no, it's gune. It's gune. Husband of one wife, gune, is specifically a woman. And then more specifically, a married woman. So, it is very, very definite in its use of saying it must be a man married to one woman. Male, female. So remember the other uses. Therefore, it's not surprising if his servants disguise themselves, or if his servants disguise themselves as deacons of righteousness, whose end will be according to the word. That's talking about Satan. It's not surprising if Satan's. So when we look at the question, can a woman serve as a deacon? Absolutely. But not in the office of deacon, within the leadership roles of the church, because it is a separate word, clearly defined in the Greek usage. Now we ask why. Well, Christ himself answered that question, because it was woman who sinned first, not the man, and there was a positional, Christ defined there is a punishment for woman's sin that includes the leadership roles in God's kingdom. It does not say, it does not lessen the ability or the talents of women. Likewise, if we said only men that are qualified, I'm thinking this backwards from how I want to say it. If we expected the work to be done only by men who meet the qualifications of elders to lead in that sense, we would miss out on a lot of talent, I guess is how I want to put that. There are a lot of men who cannot meet the qualifications for various reasons of elder that have been phenomenal leaders of men. There are many women that cannot meet the qualification to be an elder or a deacon in the office, but are phenomenal leaders and servants of the Lord. Bruce?
And just to add to that point, when you get out and talk with the denominational positions, and even some in our own church, they have catapulted this position as if it really is something great. I mean, even being an elder is nothing that you go around bragging much about because of the load and the responsibility that's going to come with it. And being a deacon, you got to be called a deacon to be able to serve in a certain area. Those people are questionable. It's like you said with Greg. Greg was doing this stuff. It was a natural transition to ask him to serve as a deacon. For people that say, why can't I be a deacon? That's a question mark. That's a red flag.
A church in which the elders either lord it over the church or are lifted up to a position of preeminence in the church is a church in trouble. It really, truly is. Okay, so let's look at Galatians 2:17. Are we a servant or a deacon of sin? Okay, so let's look at some portraits. Let's go to Matthew 23 and Matthew 20 here. I want us to look at what the portrait of a servant. Now, this one is going to be the broad usage of the word deacon. This is going to be male and female. This is going to be people who love the Lord. And this is what I want you to see what the portrait of a good servant in the church is. That's why I said this morning, tonight's was going to be the broad usage of the word deacon. So Matthew 23:11. Allison, you got it?
Yeah. But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant.
And 20:26. Who's got that? Stacy?
And it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant.
Now, I'm not going to ask you what humble means here. I'm going to ask you, why must a godly servant be humble?
Can't serve with a big head.
Okay, why not?
He said it's about you and not God.
Okay, so it becomes about you and not God. Okay, what else? Is a prideful person going to do every job that's required of a servant? Alison and I went through Versailles, which is, was the Palace of Kings outside of Paris during the time of the French Revolution. Beautiful building. Well, I think it's gaudy. President Trump would love it. It's all gold overlay. That's his style. But we walked through and we went in the king's bedroom during this tour. And there was a small kind of cutout little room right next to it, which there was a chair with a hole in the bottom. Anybody got a clue what that chair was for? And at that time, the king's physician would sit there every day watch him go, and study it for signs and portents of the future. Do you want that job? I'm serious. Do you want that job? But I say that to say, a servant doesn't choose the jobs they have. A servant does the job that's laid before them. And a prideful person is not going to do that job. They're just not. There are going to be many, many jobs in our lives as servants that are not going to be the fun, and they're not going to be glory-filled. But they're important jobs. Okay, so humble servant. Second one. A true servant is going to be a Christ follower. John 12 and verse 26 there, I think. Kendra, this one's yours.
Oh, thanks. John 12, what is it?
Well, you've not been looking up at me when you found your scriptures. I'm just going to call you ahead. 26, 12:26.
Okay. If anyone serves me, let him follow me. And where I am, there shall my servant also be. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him.
Oh, so in context, that means you can't really be a Christ servant unless you were a person that followed him down the road in the first century. No. What does Jesus specifically mean for us today when he says, where I am, you will be? Get it?
What now?
What in today's church, when Jesus says, where I am, you will be, what does that mean? If you're going to walk with me, you'll be to be my servant. What does that mean?
That means that you'll do the things that Christ did, or be trying to emulate Christ.
How?
When you look here at John, it starts with the whole idea of a grain falling and dying. And then it comes into this that says you'll follow Christ. You're going to have to give up something in yourself in order to follow Christ.
We should look like him. The kind of the idea of a little boy trying to walk in his father's footsteps. It's the same kind. We should be trying to walk in his footsteps, which means humble, serving, willing to sacrifice, willing to give up. You give up your identity to take him on. Remember, what is the definition of a beautiful woman? Not with the adorning of hair and jewelry and all that. That's not what makes a woman beautiful. It's looking like Christ that makes you beautiful. What makes a man look like Christ? It's looking like him. Not like what we wear. Go ahead, Kendra.
In 2 Corinthians 4, I was thinking of this. 4:10, it says, carry about in our body the dying of Christ, so the life of Christ may be manifested in our body.
Okay, so carry the dying Christ. Is that what you said?
So that the life of Christ may be manifested.
Okay. So you have to be a Christ follower. You have to be willing to submit. And we talked about that, when did we study submission? On marriage, a couple weeks ago. We talked about the idea of godly submission. Let's read Romans 13:4. Who's got that? By the way, if y'all didn't know it, we have the deacon of water, and that's Julie. She makes sure I have a full water bottle every service. I tell you funny, I've told this to some of you before, but the first time I preached in Haiti, in the church in Cap-Haïtien, at that point the church was meeting in a below ground level building. It was like a half story below ground, and it had no windows, 8-foot high concrete walls, no windows, and hot and dusty, and one 60-watt light bulb hanging in the middle of the auditorium of about 300 people. And I'm up there preaching, and I am just drenched with sweat. I needed this, because I wore a black suit, a white shirt and black tie like they do. And all of a sudden in the middle of it, this hand comes around my face with a washcloth. Whoops, they start wiping my face and my neck. And after, I said, well, thank you. And he said, bring your own next time. But, that's a servant. He saw that I was in distress up there. Anyway, so who's got Romans 13:4? Patty, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Don. Patty.
For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil.
I don't think that's the verse I wanted. Romans 13:4. Then I've typed the wrong verse.
It's talking about the government.
It's probably a verse.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the one I wanted, though. Yes, that does. Go ahead. What is 5?
Therefore, it's necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also because of conscience.
Maybe that's why I wanted 4 and 5. I don't know. But anyway, if you're going to be a Christ follower, if you're going to be a servant, you have to be willing to submit, even when you don't like it. You have to be willing and able to submit. Go ahead, Ken.
It says, verse 6 says, rulers are servants. And one of God devoted themselves to this very thing. So if you're a ruler, you have to be a servant too.
Yeah, even a leader has to submit. No one is above Christ. No one is above him. Next one is you've got to be willing to suffer. 2 Corinthians 3:6. How?
Who has made us competent to be ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life.
I don't know what I've done here.
I think it was Lady Strong's.
This version says adequate as servants.
This is an example of not serving.
Yeah. This was not a late night study session.
Is this one Declan was helping you?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it. Declan loves to sit in Don's lap when he's writing sermons and help me type. But no, I don't know. And I can't even remember why.
I think you were probably looking at 1 Corinthians 3:6.
Which says,
What then is Apollos and what is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each.
nah. It was one on suffering, but thanks for trying to save my bacon there. Y'all know him anyway. We have to be willing to remember Paul's list of suffering. I mean, if you're going to be, you need to expect to be ostracized. You need to expect to be made fun of. You need to expect, in this society, we need to expect tribulation. This concept, that our government is going further and further away from Christ, we have lived a charmed couple of 100 years in a godly, God-centered. I noticed again this morning, as I went by the firehouse, it says, "In God we trust," in huge black letters. I just can't imagine that's going to survive that long. I mean, big, huge letters. They put it on every public building in Freeport, if you weren't aware. City Council voted. So every building now says, "In God we trust." I can't imagine it's going to survive because somebody will come in and file a lawsuit. Well, we've just been extremely fortunate, and it's not going to last forever. At some point, every society degrades. They all do. They all rise and they all fall. Some last 1,000 years, like the Roman Empire. Some only last a few. In the discussion of Haiti, earlier this week I was in a video conference about Haiti, and it was talking about what's going on there and the struggles we're having in Haiti politically. And the person that was kind of the chairperson of this video conference, over 100 different non-governmental organizations were online watching this and communicating it. He started out by saying, "I need you to understand something. Haiti has always been volatile. For 400 years, they have had 2 kings, both of whom were killed. They have had so many dictators that stayed in power for life. They have had 12 presidents murdered in office. They have had 22 coups. He said Haiti is a volatile, unstable place, and at any moment when you go there, expect to run for your life. And he said, now knowing that, we still have a job to do, and you're all online here because you accept that we have a job to do as religious groups and whatever to work to help Haiti get better. Well, as Christians, we have 2,000 years of history that says more often than not we are persecuted, ostracized, and murdered. We need to accept that. And we need to be willing to stay a Christian through the bad times as well as the good. I'm not even going to have you read them. I'm tired of it. No. A servant needs to be a teacher. Hopefully one of these applies. Let's look at them. Wait a minute. I got 2 Corinthians 3:6 again. Look at Ephesians 3:7. I don't want to read that. That's what happens when you cut and paste. Sometimes you just Control V and Control C just get out of hand. Steve, you got it? Tell me it applies before you read it out loud.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Ephesians chapter 3, verse 7, of which I was made a minister according to the gift of God's grace, which was given to me according to the working of his power.
So, we need to, in this case, minister is a teacher. And we need to be ready to teach. Now, there are those among us who will never be comfortable standing up and presenting a lesson. How does that person serve then as a servant of Christ if they are never willing to get up and teach a class? Teaching by example? How?
Some people teach one-on-one. They can't get up in front of a crowd, but they do very well in a one-on-one setting.
Josh Boland's going to be taking over the adult auditorium class on Sunday mornings here, if Bruce can ever get out of the job. Anyway, and Josh told me this morning, he said, you know what, I've been thinking about it, and I'm not comfortable doing this. I want you to know that. But he says, I also know I need to learn how to be a leader in the church. And I said, absolutely. And I told him, ask Allison, I was so uncomfortable when the first time I had to start teaching adult classes. And I told him, I totally understand you're scared somebody's going to shoot you down with a question you can't answer. And I said, what you learn to say is, yeah, I don't know, let me look it up later. I'll get back to you. It doesn't faze me. When somebody throws out something that is so esoteric and out there and what, it doesn't faze me in the least. I don't care. If I don't know it, I'll look it up. I'll be glad to answer you later. Doesn't bother me. But we need to live an example, be prepared to teach as an example, and learn the tools it takes to be a teacher, by the way, as we talked about the Strong's Concordance. And then separately, we need to be a minister. What does the word minister mean? Serve. Okay, so let's look at Colossians 1:7. Go ahead, Julie.
You learned it from Epaphras, our dear fellow servant, who is a faithful minister of Christ on our behalf.
So Epaphras, he was not a preacher. He was not an evangelist. He was not a missionary to our knowledge. How was he a minister? Well, he was carrying messages to Paul. We know that. He brought supplies to Paul. We know that. So what we do know of him, Paul needed him to help him. Paul also needed Mark. Paul used Luke. Paul said, here I am good at what I do. I'm a debater. I'm a preacher. I'm a writer. Again, my thought, I'm half blind. I'm feeble in some way. I need people to help me. And I'm in prison. And somebody needs to take these things I'm writing to the churches and deliver them. And so you can minister in many, many ways. I'm not going to say when or how, but recently I had an opportunity to minister in a kind of a strange way, because I was in a group in which there was a person there that does not like the church at all. And so I just, it was a stressful time, and I just tried to be kind and gentle. And the person said, well, let's go eat. And they all got up, and I thought, I'm not going to presume this invitation comes to me too. And that person that doesn't like the church got up and walked away, and there was no invitation for me to join them for a meal or anything. And so I just sat there and continued to stay there, till they came back, because I was ministering silently. I was not going to make a spectacle. I was not going to give them something to complain about. I was just going to sit there and be the example that the church is here. We're here when you need us. We're here when you want us, and we're still here when you don't want us, but we're here. And that's what we have to do sometimes. And that goes along with this too. We're going to be a good example.
We should touch on any public position of being a deacon, to a degree is public. It's called an office. Elder, teacher, preacher. I don't think it's in the Bible, but I thought the principle was, I can't find the quote of it, but something about something has no value unless you've invested something into it. It goes along that lines. If you're a deacon or whatever it is, teacher, it's got to cost you something. It's got to have value because you put something into it. If you don't put something, if it doesn't cost you time or money or empathy or emotions, if it doesn't cost you that, you are not involved. You're just following through. And any of us that's been there know exactly what that means. Teachers of school, it costs them time. And bad students, it costs them even more time. And you try and invest in those things. But that is a servant's attitude. Because I will let it take my time up, and I will invest to try and make this situation better.
Having been married to a good teacher, it takes time and money and sweat and tears to be a good teacher. We all remember when Bob was going through college to be a teacher, and he said, I'm not going to work late. I'm going to give them their 8 hours a day, and that's all. Well, how many of us know how many hours Bob's working these days to be a teacher at the high school? And it's a lot. Yes, absolutely. You've got to put something into it. In fact, there's another saying, I'm not familiar with what you are, but there's a saying about family businesses. The first generation builds it, second generation maintains it, third generation loses it. And that's true in many cases because the third generation has no knowledge of how it was built and what it cost to build it, and it doesn't have the same importance to it as the person that built it. And so, good example. Oh, that was the last point. So, any questions or comments? And it's right on time. It's exactly 5:30.
Well, I was just going to say, for prayer requests, remember Sandy Russell, our daughter-in-law's mother, she finally